Hello Diana, it is July 20th, 2014. I really appreciated your last video and I kind of wanted to expand into my own little way with that. First off, I'd like to say I've never seen The Big Bang Theory. I've been told by you and among other people that I wouldn't like it and I shouldn't watch it, so I haven't. Something that I kind of wish I had watched, just because I feel like it's a big thing, but I don't know if it's for me. Plus it's not streaming on Netflix, so guess I'm gonna hold off on watching that. What I want to talk about is cultural levels and cultural appropriation. So culture, according to Google at least, is the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievements regarded collectively. And I think collectively is one of the key points there, is that culture doesn't exist unless you have some sort of collective to agree upon it. Whether your collective is, 300 million people or 30 people. You need a collective. Go the Borg. So, again, there's different levels of culture as well. You have your mainstream culture that are in the United States can be seen as more male, white dominated. And then you have a whole slew. I'm not even going to begin to attempt to list them because there are so many different subcultures and subcultures of subcultures. It's complicated. Just as I find identity is very similar and complicated. There's a lot of intersectionality of who you are and how you identify. And different people identify differently depending on what's important to them. Like you said, we are both raised in nerd culture, and nerd identity is very important to us. Something that I hold dear. It's like when someone asks, oh, how do you identify? Something that comes up in casual conversation all the time. Nerd is 99% of the time the first thing that pops out of my mouth. Sometimes occasionally surpassed by a crazy response like a figment of my own imagination, which is pretty deep if you think about it. So, yeah, complicated, intersects on many different levels in a lot of ways we don't fully understand. Because it's complicated, it's hard to think about, it's hard to really, truly, fully understand every piece of culture around you and yourself. Plus, I think if you did nothing but sit around 24/7 trying to fully understand yourself, that's a little narcissistic. Like, you should get out once in a while, talk to other people, ask how their day is or something. I would find it hard to be so self-absorbed. And I mean that somewhat in the best of ways, like you really are trying to figure yourself out, but there are other things in the world. You don't need to lock yourself up to figure yourself out. Go out, explore, eat some weird sounding food, and pawn bonds, feed the pigeons, and remember the welfare state. Alright, back to what I was talking about, culture appropriation. I was once told I would never understand it because I didn't have a marginalized identity, which in some cases is true and some is not. That's something for another time. But I do find that my nerd identity is often kind of appropriated by mainstream culture and by even other nerds sometimes. Being a woman in nerddom isn't always easy. There's a lot of stereotypes, a lot of rough patches, and it's something nerd culture is working through. But it's done on an individual level more so than on a grand scale. Like all changes, I find are done individually. And it's rough sometimes. You have great people and you have not so great people. So keep up the good work and keep being awesome, people. But I understand to a point, again, I've not seen it, but what you're saying about Big Bang Theory not always portraying nerds as nerds, it wasn't. I don't know who their intended audience was or how they made it or how any of the decisions, like I know nothing. But I do know that nerd culture has been pulled into the mainstream as more of a veneer acceptance than a deep-rooted acceptance of nerddom and nerd culture and nerd ideology, if one can take it that far. That nerdyism is okay, but to be a true nerd and know every fact about I don't know, the Thor movies, that is not really acceptable. Like, if you're that person and you head up to, you know, your local bar, if you will, people aren't gonna really usually be impressed. Don't get me wrong, you're gonna find people who find you impressive. They're out there. I find you impressive. I'd love to talk with you. There's probably a million facts you know that I don't, so if you're that person, let's have a conversation. But I just don't think nerd culture is really accepted in the grand scheme of things, and it's more veneered. Nerd culture is okay. Now, I'm not saying that that veneer isn't nerd culture, because it is. It's just not the deep-seated nerd culture that I'm used to imbibing myself with. So they're not going to be able to sit down and have a deep, long conversation about what subspace really is and how do hyperdrives function. Seriously, I feel like I'm missing something. I'm going to have to rewatch all of Stargate to try and understand what are hyperdrives powered by. It's a question that's been plaguing me for a while now. And how are ZPMs powered? Like, are they just drawing energy? Or is it like a pocket of energy? Because I know they burn out, so they can't just be sucking the energy from subspace. Plus, what if something lives in subspace? How do you work through that? I'm going to stop now because I have a million questions that I don't have answers for. And I want to know. So, I'll make a different video about that. But, like I was saying, nerd culture is kind of appropriated into the mainstream. It's changed to fit the appeal to the mass, en masse. And it's true, it's sad, and kind of beautiful at the same time, and rough. So, hang in there. It's still nerddom, I promise, just a different form than you're used to looking at.